Hey, what's up everybody? It's Aaron Hilliard from Mushroom Wonderland. Me and my dog Gunner are going on a little adventure down to Hartstine Island in the Puget Sound of Washington State. So come with me on this episode of Mushroom Wonderland to see what's growing in the Puget Sound right now in January 2026.
Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
All right, I'm here on Hartstine Island, kind of off the beaten path, and I see a lot of people reporting good mushrooms from here. It's interesting just to go see what kind of mushrooms are growing in different places. So let's go into the woods here. Here's a mushroom growing right here on the side of the trail. And this one is a fiber cap, I can tell, because it looks like fibers making up the cap. This one's pretty umbonate, so it has this like nipple in the center of it, fading to a lighter color on the margin. And the way to identify mushrooms, you got to pick them. You got to get the entire base. I want to see if the base is doing anything interesting. Not really. You know, there's no bluing or anything like that, which can be an indication of certain species. And I smell it to see what it is. And this is the corn silk fiber head. And it smells just like green corn. It smells really good. But you wouldn't want to eat this one. It is toxic. It contains something called muscarine, which is a pretty nasty toxin. Muscarine has really bad effects on the kidneys and can make you salivate and weep out of your orifices, so not a good thing. But this is a mycorrhizal mushroom that grows with the evergreen trees here, and it's got a brown spore print and this fibrous look on top of the cap. Definitely smells like green corn. Toxic mushroom that you shouldn't be eating. Don't eat the inocebi, but this one is pretty cool. I like the morphology of it, and it smells good to me. I like the smell of the green corn. Another thing I see a lot of is right here. This is known as Clavulina coralloides, or the crested coral, and this is a pretty decent edible. The Ramaria are a little bit different and not so good for the eating all the time. Sometimes they can really upset your tummy, but this one is generally safe. I've never heard of anybody getting sick from Clavulina. Look at right here. There's more fruitings of the Clavulina coralloides, and it's growing all over the place. I know somebody who makes crab cakes out of these. Just try a small amount first if you're gonna try them for the first time. They're the kind of this grayish beige color, and they're very brittle and crumbly. Ramaria is really not that brittle. These kind of grow in these branched little bundles, and yeah, they're very brittle. You can just crumble them apart. Ramaria doesn't do that. But here we've got a lot of Clavulina coralloides. So the crested coral, a pretty decent edible late winter mushroom. So these are all over the place right now. Be careful if you're gathering them from places where there's a lot of sand, because it'll splash up, and then the mushroom will actually like envelop the sand, so it's gritty inside the mushroom. But these ones growing in the moss and duff are totally clean and good to eat. So, you know, every mushroom is poisonous to some people. So make sure that you just eat a little bit at first to make sure that you don't get a GI upset from it. But they don't contain any like cell-destroying toxins. They might upset some people's tummies, but I've never heard of anyone getting sick from these. So Clavulina coralloides, or the crested coral mushroom, a decent edible that grows in the winter. So this is kind of gross, but interesting. See this fuzz that grows on the dog poop? You've probably seen this on the side of trails. This is a fungus, and it was named by a mycologist who had a real beef with a different mycologist. He decided that when describing this mushroom, he would name it after Blakesley. So this mushroom is known as Phycomyces blakesleyanus, so that every dog in the land would have Blakesley's name on it. So when you see this fuzzy fungi growing on dog poop, you can tell your friends that story. It's kind of funny, and it's true. And then right here next to the fuzzy dog poo, we have this little mushroom that has a really pronounced ring. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? That's Chanterelles longistrata. It's not known to be a decent edible. They just don't grow in big enough numbers, but a striking annulus on the stem right there. So the purpose of that annulus, or that ring on the stipe, is to cover the gills until they're mature and start dropping spores. And then it has this white kind of tissue that's on the cap. Beautiful mushrooms. Some of these Chanterelles are really pretty, and they are cold tolerant, so you can often find these out here in January. What a ornate and beautiful little mushroom. It'd be easy to overlook this one. So slow down and pay attention, and you can find some beautiful little mushrooms like this. So I'm going to take some nice macro photos of this little Chanterelle just because it's so pretty. Some big maple trees. These are Acer macrophylla, the biggest leaf maple there is in the world, and we call it the big leaf maple right here. Ganoderma applanatum, and you can tell these easily because you can just scratch the bottom surface. MW for Mushroom Wonderland. Look at that. It's kind of fun to draw on them. Sometimes artists will take these and do beautiful artwork on them, but I kind of discourage people from ripping these big conks off of the trees. This thing could be here forever. And all of this brown layer, this is all spores right here on top of the cap. So the spores kind of come up here and land on it, but they get caught in the drifts and they land on all this downed wood and they help to decay it. So really valuable for the forest and the ecology, but it's also kind of fun to ride on. This is known as the artist conk, Ganoderma applanatum, grown here on big leaf maple. Look at here, Gliophorus citicinus, or the parrot wax cap. Look at those. Wow. That is like one of the most magical looking mushrooms ever. It's super slimy, so beautiful. And so always excited to see the parrot wax cap out here. All of these wax cap type mushrooms that come out in the winter are just so much fun to go out and hunt for. This is a great year for the parrot wax cap. I've seen them everywhere. Like, they're not uncommon, so don't get mad at me for pulling these up. I wanted you to be able to see the gills and stuff. Very wide, thick gills, and just super viscid, the whole thing. But like I said, I've been to places where I was like literally slipping on these. So I used to think they were a really rare mushroom, but it turns out maybe it's just that great of a year, but I've been seeing them a lot. And so get your eyes into this kind of habitat where there's cedar scales all over the ground, vaccinium, these huckleberry bushes, and there's all of this kind of Hygroforaceae material out here. So these wax caps, oh, look at that. There's another gorgeous one right there. And these just look like emeralds in the forest. How pretty. So I'm always excited to come across the parrot wax cap. Beautiful mushroom. I came across this little lepiatoid mushroom, or a Lepiota of some sort. And it's got this kind of staining on it. It's the only one I see here, but this is interesting. I don't see these in my neck of the woods, so I'm always kind of interested in the Lepiota for some reason. Some of these mushrooms, known as the dapperlings, can be deadly. I definitely wouldn't risk eating any of these lepiatoid mushrooms that have these scaly caps like this, and they're saprobes, so they're found decaying things. And then they have white gills like this. These kind of mushrooms can be dangerous and contain amatoxins, just like the death cap. So most Lepiota species are just, it's suggested to avoid them. Back in the day, like chlorophyllum or the shaggy parasols used to be called Lepiota, but now Lepiota is kind of its own thing, and yeah, they could be pretty toxic. So I'm not gonna eat it or anything, but I definitely want to find out the identity of this one. An interesting singular Lepiota with some pretty distinct features. We get this dark scaling on the stem, and then it goes to white, this dark burnt pancake looking scaling on the cap, and nice white gills, and they're not attached to the stem. You see that? Those are all ID features that can help me find the identity of this mushroom. I'm definitely going to make a collection of this to do some microscopy, dry it, and save it to be DNA sequenced later on. Lepiota species, we'll just call this inedible or caution, and but a pretty mushroom growing here in the winter. Here's some beautiful bright wax caps. that are popping up out of the duff here. Looks like somebody picked one already. Here we can get a nice look at them. Very bright, beautiful mushrooms. You can see why they call them wax caps, and they feel like they're made out of wax, like wax candy or something, and everything sticks to them. So taking nice photos, it's good to have them cleaned up, but these are the jewels of the wintertime forest here in the PNW, and in a lot of other places that aren't buried in snow. This kind of habitat is just really good for these wax cap type mushrooms, the western red cedar. All of these scales, they don't grow directly in association with these trees, but they grow in the decaying duff of these trees. So here's another one. They're probably non-toxic. There's a couple coming up there, but you know, no cell-destroying toxins, but just kind of understudied, under-eaten, not really appetizing, but very beautiful photogenic mushrooms. I'm excited to find this kind of habitat here in this place that I've never been to before, because I've seen a lot of cool wax cap stuff. I see another wax cap peeking at me over here. That's really pretty. These kind of strawberry red wax caps, I think, are probably Hygrocebi latissima. And there's only one here, so I'm not going to mess with it. If there was a whole collection, I'd take nice photos and stuff, but a lot of different little wax caps popping out. So when you're walking along all of this duff from the red cedar, just keep an eye out for these bright, colorful mushrooms. They look like jewelry laying in the duff. Pretty nice down here in Hartstine Island, kind of tucked away down here in the South Sound. There's a lot of little islands out here. If you look on a map, you'll notice it's just peppered with little tiny islands. Some of them have bridges to get to them. Other ones like that one don't. I don't even know what that island is. But really nice. Actually, some sand on the beach. Here in the Northwest, it's mostly rocky beaches like this. But there's even some sand here because the tide's out. Came back into the forest, and what did I spot right here? But some super late season Lactarius rubitus, or the candy cap. Candy cap mushrooms growing right next to parrot wax caps. Look at that. How amazing is that? I wouldn't believe it unless I saw it, and here you go. There's your proof. I swear I didn't touch these. That is so cool that they're growing right next to each other. Two of my favorite mushrooms. Lactarius rubitus, or the candy cap's gonna smell like sweet maple syrup when it's dried. And then the parrot wax cap, just obviously one of the most photogenic mushrooms out here. So what a cool thing to see them both just growing right next to each other. And especially in January to see candy caps out. I might grab these two for sequencing because they're far enough from the forests where I find them that I'd be curious to know if they're the same species. What a cool picture that is. So I'm going to leave the parrot wax caps alone, but I'm going to harvest these candy caps and I'll show you what they look like. So they're going to have this orange peel-like texture on top. They're never slimy. Underneath, yeah, these ones are getting pretty old, but they have these cream-colored gills. The stems on these snap super easy like chalk because they are actually related to Russula. So these don't smell like maple syrup to me when they're wet out in the field, but they do smell like candy cap. So if you know what they smell like, then you can detect it, but it's not maple syrup. But when you dry these, it smells like maple syrup, so strong it'll stink your whole house up. Any bag or basket that you collect these in is gonna smell like maple syrup forever. I've had backpacks that I've washed several times and they still smell like candy caps from not putting them in a bag or something. So, but in January to be finding Lactarius rubitus or the candy cap, especially next to the parrot wax caps, that's really cool. There we go. There we go. We got a few collections going on. I'm going to take these candy caps, fit them neatly in my box. These little tackle boxes are awesome. You can just put it in your backpack. Collect a lot of different specimens. There's a Mycena sticker, Alan Rockefeller, Mandy Cork, but a nice little new tackle box. I love getting a new tackle box. Kind of scanned around for more, but I only see one. This is the real Hygrocebi flavescens. Look how yellow it is. So those other ones were more orange, which tells me probably not flavescens, but this one definitely would fit that description. But again, there's a lot of different obscure species, so I don't know the exact species, but look at this yellow wax cap. Really pretty, growing here in January. Thanks to this mild winter, we still have a lot of mushrooms growing out here, so man, I could just stay here in this forest all day long and look at all the wax caps. Really fun. Right down here, I happened upon a couple of kind of strange looking mushrooms. I'm going to pull this one up to collect it. I'll put it down here with this other one. We can have a look. This one known as probably Helvella compressa, and they call it that, the compressed elfin saddle. So the cap, it's a cup fungi. It's actually related to morels and Gyromitra, Helvella. Not known to contain any gyromitrin, but not known as a good edible. And I guess it kind of looks like an elf saddle. And so these produce their spores in a little tube, and it forcefully ejects them into the air, unlike guild mushrooms. So these guys are ascomycetes, and we've been mostly looking at basidiomycetes that just kind of drop their spores into the wind. These guys will actually shoot their spores off into the wind, and if you blow on them just right, sometimes they'll do it right before your eyes. But these ones don't want to do it for me, so yeah, maybe another day. But Helvella compressa, related to the elfin saddles, but maybe known as the compressed elfin saddle. This one, we'll just call it inedible, but kind of a cool find in winter. An ascomycete, which is quite a bit different than the basidios. This is essentially a cup that's folded inside out on top of a stalk. So there you go, Helvella compressa. So I'm going to take another collection. I'm just going to collect this one that I already picked. Get it here into my tackle box. Doesn't really have to be pretty, but these are fun to look at in the microscope. And another one that would be nice to document being around here. Since I went to Hawaii, I'm really into making these collections. And what a beautiful collection I've got so far today. Some of the most colorful mushrooms you're going to find in the year are going to be in the winter. I notice much fewer mushrooms as I get away from the red cedar and into the Douglas fir habitat. But right down here I see some pretty distinct mushrooms that I recognize, and they've got this kind of cloudy look with these dark splotches. And what this is called Clitosobe sclerotoidea. So this one is a parasitic fungi that grows on other fungi. So underneath here is the decaying corpse of probably a Helvella, and then these Clitosobe grow off of it. Maybe a Russula, but I usually see them growing on Helvella. Dingy gray mushroom, not a good edible, probably toxic, good one to avoid. Clitosobes are notoriously not good to eat, so I would avoid eating these, but kind of interesting. It's a fungi who just solely parasitizes other mushrooms that are rotting. So you can see the mycelium climbing all through there. Still pretty cool. Parasitic Clitosobe, a winter mushroom that you can find out in the forest right now. Don't eat them. All right, we got the Clitosobe sclerotoidea. Let's keep on going. This kind of forest would be epic in the autumn, but right now it seems like most of the mushrooms are growing in those habitats with the maple and the red cedar. There's kind of two main habitats here in Western Washington, and we have this deep coniferous forest with a lot of moss on the ground and stuff like that. And then we have that more deciduous forest, and also with the western red cedar. Oh, and I'm afraid I spoke too soon, saying that there's not a lot growing out here. Look at this. A completely pristine golden chanterelle. Couple of them. Look at that. Chanterelles formosus, or the Pacific golden chanterelle. I see more back there. So wow, these are actually in perfect shape in January. Not a bad find. So man, what a cool day out here. Finding lots of different mushrooms in these different habitats. This one's probably the most popular foraged edible mushroom in Washington. And yeah, the caps are like a little bit waterlogged, but they look like they're in really good shape, super firm. So I don't eat a ton of these. They have a tendency to upset my stomach no matter how they're cooked. So I'll save them and give them to my mom. And I think I see another one back there. I gotta go retrieve it. It's like too perfect to leave behind. Oh yeah, more here. Look at this. Very nice. So that's pretty neat to run across a bunch of edible mushrooms out here in January. Didn't really expect that. Right here, here's some more edible mushrooms, but these guys are not good to eat, and especially at this age. These are blown out Lepiota. Quite a big flush of them in here. Really common mushrooms, mycorrhizal. I've eaten them. They're just underwhelming, even when they're super fresh. And when they're old like this, I definitely wouldn't eat them. Very woody stems. I mean, I guess a survival food, but look how wide those gills are. I do love Lepiota. I think it's a beautiful genus of mushrooms. I've thought to myself that if I were to pick a group of mushrooms to really study, that these might be them, the Lepiota. Oh my gosh. And we just came into earth tongue territory. Gunner pointed this out. Look at this. Trichoglossum, or the black earth tongues. They're everywhere right here. Wow. That's pretty cool. So yeah, this is the hairy earth tongue, or Trichoglossum. Can't think of the exact species epithet, but they are everywhere in this spot. So kind of cool. I should get a collection of these because these are bigger than the ones I've been finding recently. So good job, Gunner, finding all the earth tongues. Good job, buddy. I guess that's the hair that they're referring to, the hairiness. I don't know. Not that hairy. I really didn't expect to find any edible mushrooms out here, especially not like a pound or something. So I had to empty out this pocket on my backpack to carry my chanterelles, but my mom will be happy with those. I keep seeing a lot of these, so let's talk about them for a second. These ones are bird nest fungi, or the woolly bird nest fungi. You can see why they're called woolly. And this one right here in the center has not lost its cap yet. So it has a cap on it while the peridioles mature. And the peridioles are these little egg-like structures inside of the nest. And that's where the spores get produced. So they start out kind of like this spiky little ball. And as they mature, then that deteriorates and it exposes the peridioles. And what happens is the raindrops fall down through the canopy. They splash in these little cups. The peridioles scatter out onto the forest floor and more spores are made. And you can see these are everywhere. They're actually really common, and they're a really exciting one for a lot of beginners because they're just so whimsical and bizarre the way that they distribute their spores. But these are more closely related to gilled mushrooms than they are to like the earth tongues and the helvellas and the morels and stuff. Totally different division of fungi. So the Nidula niviotomentosa, or the woolly bird nest fungi, these are always cool to look at. Grown on little sticks and twigs in the forest in the winter. Really a pretty common mushroom. And this is cool. You can see all the phases of them and some peridioles in there. Looks like eggs in a nest. No wonder they call it the bird's nest fungi. Right here we have the yellowfoot, or the winter chanterelle. Here's a couple more over here. And these are pretty old. They're pretty long in the tooth. And they're so brittle because they're waterlogged. But check out those anastomosing gills. That's really cool looking. That's what that feature is called. And they're not true gills. They're kind of like false gills, like other things in Chanterelles. So related to chanterelles, but a different genus. This one, Chanterelles tubiformis. Some people are calling it Neotubiformis here in the Northwest. But very umbilicate. And yeah, it just runs right down the middle of the stem, and it's hollow. And when they're young, they have a very bright yellow base. As they get older, it's more dingy brown. But these are a good edible, and you can find them in just crazy numbers out here sometimes. Look for that umbilicate cap that's really irregular on the edge. Anastomosing gills that are decurrent, so they run down the stem. And hollow stipe, yellow foot, and you got winter chanterelles. Pretty good edible. For sure. When they get older like this, they're just kind of bland. They're pretty flavorful when they're young and fresh. I think they're pretty tasty in pasta. You can still find them out here. They're just not as high quality when they're at this age, but they'd be totally fine to eat. Just make sure you cook all wild mushrooms well, including these. Chanterelles tubiformis, or Neotubiformis, which really hasn't been accepted yet. The winter chanterelle, or the yellowfoot. My friend Daniel Winkler likes to say that if a mushroom has more than one common name, it's a really special mushroom, and these have a couple of common names. So yeah, beautiful. Man, I'm excited to have found this place. Sometimes it pays to just jump in the truck, drive an hour from home, go somewhere new and check it out, because I found an awesome new mushroom spot. So make sure to go to mushroomwonderland.com or check out my Patreon for all the psychedelic mushroom videos. And stay tuned for way more videos coming up. Mushroom Wonderland is just growing like crazy, and I'm excited about the future. So more videos to come. We'll see you on the next one. Much love, everyone. Peace out.